Okay, hi everyone. This is just a quick review for the basal ganglia because I don't think I explained it that well in the review session earlier this week. So, yeah, I'm gonna do this instead. عشان أبري ذمتي. Anyway, let's begin. So the basal ganglia. Basically, what is the basal ganglia? It's a mass of gray matter that's located in the brain. Like a bunch of nuclei working together in the brain. It's a major part of my motor system. Alright? It doesn't affect lower motor neurons directly. No, it goes back to the cortex and affects the output of the cortex. Okay? So my basal ganglia has to do with my motor system, but it doesn't affect my lower motor neurons directly. It affects the output that comes out of my cortex, you know, the corticospinal tract and so on. All right, what are the components of the basal ganglia? You should keep in mind three things, okay? First thing is the corpus striatum. Okay? Next is the subthalamic nucleus. And lastly, the substantia nigra. Okay, these are the three main components of the basal ganglia. Now, the corpus striatum can be further divided. It basically consists of two things. The first being the caudate nucleus, and the next being the putamen, the lentiform, sorry. Lentiform. Okay? Now, the lentiform nucleus can also be further divided into the putamen and globus pallidus. And then globus pallidus, you have both internal and external. Okay? So, let me turn this so you can see it. The basal ganglia has to do with your motor system. The output of the basal ganglia goes back to the cortex, and then it modifies the output from the cortex, and it's composed of three things. Number one being the corpus striatum. Number two, substantia nigra. Number three, the subthalamic nucleus. Corpus striatum can be further divided into two different nuclei. The first being the caudate nucleus, the next being the lentiform. And then the lentiform is further divided into the putamen and the globus pallidus. And globus pallidus has internal and external components. Okay, now you need to know the difference between what the corpus striatum is and what the striatum is, or neostriatum. But I'll be referring to it as striatum. Corpus striatum is, like I said, it's the caudate plus the lentiform. Alright? The neostriatum is it's gonna be the caudate nucleus as well as the putamen. I can't pronounce it properly, so no, you know what I'm talking about anyway. So it consists of the caudate and putamen together. Okay, just the putamen aspect of the lentiform. The lentiform was both putamen here. Here it's both putamen and globus pallidus. But in the neostriatum, I'm only talking about the putamen. So you need to know the difference between those two. Now, let's talk about the caudate alone. Okay? Where is it located? It's located in the telencephalon, which means that basically it's part of the actual hemispheres. Okay, your cerebral hemispheres. it's C-shaped and it has three parts: a body, a tail, and a head. Now, if I'm going to draw it out, then basically, if this is my thalamus, okay, this is the thalamus, and then next to the thalamus I have my internal capsule, okay, so this is the internal capsule, and then lateral to that is going to be my lentiform nucleus, and lentiform nucleus. And then the lentiform, like we said, has the putamen and then the globus pallidus, both internal and external. Where does the caudate come in all of this? Basically, if it starts over here, it's going to go all the way C-shaped and back down to where the putamen is. So this is the head of it, and it goes kind of above the thalamus and then goes down to the putamen. So this whole thing, the C-shaped structure, is your caudate nucleus. This is the head, this is the body, and this is the tail. Alright? It kind of lies it is basically parallel to the lateral ventricle. So the major relation it has is the lateral ventricle, because it's kind of following its course, sort of. Now, one thing you need to know this is that the tail of the caudate nucleus is attached to the amygdaloid body. Okay, and this has something to do with your limbic system. Now, where the tail of the caudate fuses with the putamen, this area is called nucleus accumbens. Okay, and this is the area of fusion between caudate, the tail, and the putamen. Now, as we can see here, that the head of the caudate is separated from the lentiform nucleus by the internal capsule, and more specifically, the anterior limb. Let me just write that down. Anterior limb is what separates the head of the caudate from the lentiform nucleus. So let's review. The caudate is C-shaped. It has a head, it has a body, it has a tail. The point where the tail fuses with the putamen of the lentiform is called nucleus accumbens. And also the tail is attached to the amygdaloid body, which is related to your limbic system. Okay, now the lentiform nucleus has two parts. We can see them clearly here. You have your putamen and your globus pallidus. Now, globus pallidus is divided into two parts: your internal part, which is the most medial, and the external part. And the lateral or outer part of the wedge is the putamen. The entire wedge is your lentiform nucleus. It's wedge-shaped. The outer part of it is the putamen, and the inner part of it is called the globus pallidus. And then lateral to the putamen, I don't have it drawn here, but basically in this area, you're going to have your external capsule. Okay, so let's talk about the connections. Okay. Basically, the striatum, which is shown in blue here, the caudate,